All right, so welcome back to hashtag coffee. We have Jonathan Herzog. My internet literally just decided to fall over dead, so we've rebooted. I believe that we are back live on the interwebs.
We are.
Can confirm. All right, so here's the yeah. Thank you.
You're making Letterkenny jokes, John.
I was gonna say here's the real pressing question, Jonathan Herzog. Do you watch Letterkenny?
Wait, what? Say that again.
do you watch Letterkenny? I mean, you probably don't have time to watch any TV, and good. You shouldn't keep working. You're doing, the best possible work. Have you seen Letterkenny yet?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay, entirely fair. People were yelling at me to watch Letterkenny because I'm Canadian, right? So people have been yelling at me to watch Letterkenny, which is basically this comedy show about some farm stupid thing in Canada or whatever.
A tiny little northern Ontario town.
And I'm telling you, it is so unbelievably dead on the sort of the upbringing that I remember having and how completely and totally ridiculous that is.
You may require closed captioning or a translator.
It does. So I made my wife watch all 6 seasons of it, and at first she's like, "What is this?" Like 5 episodes in, she's like, "This is the dumbest thing ever." By about the 3rd season, she's like, "Yeah, I figured out." Totally. Anyway, none of that was the point. Where were we when my internet decided we needed a short break?
Well, Jonathan and I were talking about the makeup of his district.
Yes,
that it is the financial hub of the world, pretty much. But he made a really good point about the income disparity. The wealth gap is extremely pronounced in that area because you have massive Wall Street bank people, but you also have the people that are struggling to get by month to month there. Do you happen to know? Do you know what the Alice score is that United Way keeps? Are you aware of the Alice score?
I'm not familiar. No.
Alice, I would love to. You might want to look at this. This would be something interesting, and it certainly it's something we pay attention to here. Alice is the United Way's sort of standard for people that are in danger of becoming homeless. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. So these are literally people that are working and are still one disaster away from losing their homes. I'd be curious to know what your district's Alice score is. Ours here in Pasco County is 44%, and it's going to rise to 48% next year, meaning almost half of our county is one $400 to $600 emergency away from losing their homes and their home security. That's not even the poverty line. The poverty line is actually lower than that.
Yeah.
So the idea that we're facing housing affordability problems in my county. I can't even imagine what that's like for a wage earner in your district. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I would love to dive into that data and figure out, because anecdotally from what I hear from folks is, I'll cite off from, some national stats about, the affordability crisis and, folks, as you suggest, not being able to meet or have any basic savings in the case of an emergency. And then people will be like, what do you mean? That's me. And I live in the West Village, and I live in Hell's Kitchen. And I live, in all around the district, despite the sky-high median household income, because that doesn't capture the wide disparity and distribution of that. So, I mean, you're spot on, where a lot of the headline numbers that we often tout as, strong economy, strong economic growth, mask the fact that tens of thousands of people in my district and tens of millions around the country are scraping by.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I have friends that lived in Manhattan years and years ago, and the horror stories they tell about an apartment with a hot plate and no bathroom, in the $1,100 a month range, where you had no choice but to eat takeout every night. I can't even imagine where we are now. That was the mid '90s when I was hearing those stories.
Yeah, and there was a study that came out recently that showed that we've hit unprecedented levels of people departing New York because of the affordability crisis. So it's we're actually losing population because people can't afford to live in the city.
And New York City has been growing for my entire life. Like the number of people living in greater New York has grown consistently since the 60s. It's amazing to me that's becoming such a problem. So what about the policies that you want to introduce? What about the platform that you support helps fix the affordability crisis?
Yeah, so there's many elements to this, but the first and foremost, the simplest but most profound in many ways is cash, right? The antidote to poverty is very simple. It is cash. And the absence of cash was not an absence of character, it's an absence of cash.
Yeah.
And so the freedom dividend would go a tremendous way in putting financial security back in people's minds, so they can afford their basic needs, they can move for a new opportunity, go back to school, maybe, start a business if they wanted to. So I think the freedom dividend would go leaps and bounds in restoring that sense of basic economic security.
Do you happen to know, I looked up, when Yang talked about UBI in the debate that night, the website went up with the calculator for your zip code.
Thank you for bringing this up.
Do you happen to know what your calculator is for your district?
Ooh, that's a good question. I am not certain, but it is in the tens of millions.
Yeah, well, my zip code, which is the small town I live in and some surrounding areas. I'll tell you what, to make it broader, the western part of my county, it's over $100 million a month pumped into our economy. And for a county that's on the fringe of Tampa Bay in Florida, there's nothing ever that has put that much money into our economy on a monthly basis.
Exactly.
There's never been anything like it. It would be absolutely transformative for us. So I'm just curious, if you have some sort of ballpark idea of how much money would pour into that district.
I mean, what's your population? Times it by 1,000.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the fast
right.
math. 750,000, but you have to look at the adults.
How many kids or whatever? Yeah.
Right.
So at least 500.
Yeah, I was going to say, so
right.
Let's say it's half that or a little more than half that. That's still an astonishingly large pile of money. And that's monthly. That's what would come into your district every month.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Like the idea of people, like you're saying, people that are working jobs, that are bartenders, that are doormen, that are, porters, bellhops, truck drivers, the idea that suddenly their burden would be, they would be able to go out and spend money on things they want, not just the things that they need to survive. And that would make, I absolutely am super enthused about the freedom dividend. It would transform my life for sure. I'm on Social Security disability. I have some health issues, and it would, I'm disincentivized. I actually make about $150 to $200 a month working a counseling job, and I had my Social Security cut this month because of that income. So I'm disincentivized from seeking a way to get that extra $1,000 a month in my hand because it would cost me my Social Security dividend.
Yeah.
So sorry, I want to break in with a point here. I've been a fan of Elizabeth Warren since early 2015. Actually, before that, basically, when she was first introducing the Consumer Protection Bureau, which is was a fantastic. Yeah, it was a fantastic attempt. So she tweeted literally 2 hours ago about the fact that she's going to help everybody on welfare. Everybody on welfare is going to get $200 more a month. A, that's not 1,000, and B, like almost 70% of the people that should be getting help, from homeless people to everybody else to the working poor or whatever, they're not on welfare anyway. So it's underserving the actual population by just massive numbers. So it's already failing there. And, he wants to give people free 5 times more than that, right?
C, there's a C. Which I don't know which is supposed to go. C, welfare is administered by states. Welfare programs, cash assistance programs are, even though they come from the federal government, they're administered by the states. How is she going to break down every state's legislative obstreperousness when it comes to this? That's a problem. And I love Elizabeth Warren.
Me too. I mean, except the second she botched the automation thing, that was a heartbreaker for me. Anyway, guy we're interviewing, what say you?
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
nailed it.
Also been a fan of Senator Warren, but look, I mean, Andrew said this early on in the race. He's like, if Joe Biden, runs on the urgency of automation and adopts the Humanity First platform, then sign him up. And it's actually funny. I don't know if you guys saw, but last week, Vice President Biden was on Colbert, and there was a striking similarity in the language that he used to describe the problem.
That's polite. That's polite guy language for plagiarism.
And also, like Yang said really early on, if somebody copies my platform, I'll just drop out and back them. And I don't think he's kidding.
Right.
So Biden starts talking about the fourth industrial revolution and going on or whatever. My buddy Rio does the Moving Forward podcast with me, brings up this in context with Biden all the time, that Obama has been out for UBI just in some speeches over the last couple of years. And it's a non-zero probability that Obama might say, hey, you might want to copy this because it would actually work. And then, like, I'd have to fucking be a Biden supporter. Not excited about that. But it really is about the policy. Like and I love Andrew Yang as a human. The more I hear from this guy, the more I like him. But it really comes down to, who's gonna throw, what is it, $20 million a month, whatever the hell it is, into Pasco County. And so far, no one running except for Andrew Yang is going to have, even within an order of magnitude, that much impact.
West Pasco County, from 41 to the Gulf, it's over 100 million.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Right, because you just in the one.
My zip code was 47 million.
Right. I forgot it was about like how many zip codes we have. That's insane. Like, that's just unbelievably insane. And we could actually do it. Like, there's nothing in the laws of physics that say that we can't pass the freedom dividend. And like, how does that compare with maybe potentially, but probably not, impacting Jerry Nadler's ability to impeach the president when that actually won't happen anyway? Right? Like, it just, I struggle with that. Because, like, on one hand, we can advance the narrative, even if that's all we do. We very, with every ounce of energy we possibly can, advance the narrative that will actually affect the lives of literally every American citizen, period, for the rest of time. Or we like really dial in on whether or not Jerry Nadler is going to be able to focus on his job, because Republicans say mean things about him, which, as evidenced by this morning, they're just going to do anyway because they're a-holes.
I got a question from our let me try that again.
We'll wait.
I'm a professional. You wouldn't know it from today's show, but I am. I have a question from one of our viewers. Maria Richardson wants to ask, what answers do you have when people ask, inevitably, he said, how are you going to pay for it?
Yes. So the question really is, how can we afford to not have the freedom dividend? Where, by conservative estimates, the cost of gross poverty in the United States is $700 billion a year in pure health and education outcomes. And so in terms of the actual funding mechanism, we go to where the money is. The money is in trillion-dollar tech firms that have paid zero in federal taxes. So if we pass a mild value-added tax, which every other advanced economy has, then we can easily fund the dividend for every American adult.
Yeah, I love that question, because that was my first thought. I mean, that, again, I've been talking about UBI as a concept we should get into, but then people started asking that question and listening to Yang's conversation about it. I think, Jonathan, your answer is better than the three that I have heard, like the variations I've heard from Yang, because it really speaks to the fact that that cost is already going out in the form of the problems that are actually existing today. But yeah, we're the biggest country on the face of the earth. And the VAT thing, all the European countries do it. Like, everywhere that has, almost everywhere that has a higher rated living environment than the United States has a value-added tax. And then, people have some questions about that. I've actually looked really deeply into the value-added tax because I was a little curious about how that would redound to the actual economy. Turns out prices will probably, tracked on what other countries have done it. Prices will go up on consumers actually really marginally compared to the actual amount of the value-added tax. And you would have to spend about $120,000 a year personally, individually, to balance it out. Right.
What blessing if you are.
Right. That's exactly it. Right. Like if you're, this is like spending on, stuff that the value-added tax is actually going to be applied to. You literally have to spend $120,000 on stuff for it to affect you in any way, right? So it becomes a complete and total non-issue when it comes to literally having the capacity to end homelessness, doubling or tripling the quality of life of the working poor. It's amazing. So, John, Did you want to add anything to that? And then I got another question for you.
Oh, sure. No, I mean, yeah, I think the real question is, and we can talk about this in the healthcare context too, where it's like we actually have public healthcare, right? It's called an emergency room, and then we pay in the back end, spending $1 in $5 of GDP on our healthcare system. So we end up spending a lot more when we don't invest in people on the front end.
Man, that is exactly the answer to how we should be treating homelessness. That the dollars and cents argument. Although I hate that I can't make the moral you should just take care of people argument to my Republican friends. When we talk about what it costs, that every interaction that a homeless person has with the medical system is an emergency first responder. That if they have a mental health crisis day, their contact with the mental health system is a sheriff's deputy. Like, it costs us more to leave people on the streets than it does to fix the homelessness problem. And I think that's a great argument. I'm excited to hear you make that argument. And I just don't, if conservatives resist that idea, then it really was never about the money at all. It was about judging people who are less well off than you. It's a war on poor people,
which is a pattern.
Yeah, and I wish it wasn't, but it's consistent over time. And I've had many uncomfortable conversations with people about homelessness from all across the political spectrum. And but if you just put people in houses, they'll tear them up and destroy them. Yeah, about 20 or 30%. And guess what? That will still be cheaper than what we're doing now. So, so why don't we do that? Oh, yeah. I hear a lot of foot dragging about poverty issues, extreme poverty issues in my community, and it's extraordinarily frustrating.
Yeah, well, the good thing is they always apply as very intense Christians. They always apply the Christian oh wait, no, they don't at all. Rhonda asked, has Jonathan taken corporate money for his campaign?
Oh,
absolutely not.
Really? I think we could just
asked that question blind. We asked that question blind. We didn't know what you were going to say.
I had an idea. Okay. No, but just that whole like, oh, yay! Greg for the win. Okay, so we've talked about the freedom dividend. I could literally talk about the ramifications of that for another 3 or 4 hours. But in the interest of being well rounded, if we can attempt that, what would you say are another of the couple of Yang's policies that would have similar positive effects, or just a couple other of your favorites, since there's 8 million of them?
Yeah, I think one other huge one that, again, is so eminently feasible and we can do in such a efficient, fast time frame is democracy dollars, right? Which is going a step beyond saying campaign finance reform, overturning Citizens United, which would require a constitutional amendment, and saying, you know what, we're going to put resources into people's hands so they can allocate them to the candidates of their choice. And they tested it out in Seattle. It expands participation, and it works. So I think that's, again, one of the examples of we have to make an affirmative vision, an affirmative case, not just the negative defensive case against the policies that are in place. So putting 100 democracy dollars into the hands of every American adult so it can wash out any of the corporate lobbyist money or PAC money coming candidates' ways, I think would go a huge way to accomplishing any of the progressive fights around climate change to gun safety, because we know that you have to follow the money. You have to follow the incentives that drive people's choices, and public financing would go a huge way to changing that.
All right, so I think this is a good place to ask the question of, like, we all kind of know the answer to how you're going to pay for it when it comes to UBI and at healthcare. How are you going to pay for democracy dollars? Where does that money come from? If we're not taking the teeth out of the PACs and the lobbyists, where does the money come from to put $100 in my hand to donate to local candidates?
Yeah, so that money is not being printed. It's not floating around in the markets. It's like a voucher code, right? It's like you get an email, you get a coupon code, and so it just being returned back into our federal candidates. So that's not, cash that's being returned to you. It's just being recirculated to wash out corporate lobbyist cash.
I'm not following.
Yeah,
that.
as far as the pay for it amounts to $23 billion nationwide per election, which is 4 times more spending than mega donor contributions in dark money. So it is a big deal. $23 billion in the context of the U.S. economy is a rounding error. Number one, and number two, it would be money in the economy because that money actually goes to advertising. It goes to, you know what I mean? So like that, it is actually going to redound to having an economic impact. But think about this, like even the people that are against Citizens United, they're going on TV stations who are definitely not against Citizens United because since Citizens United came out, all the networks are getting 2, 3, 4 times as much money in revenue, whatever it is. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's a lot. So they're not incentivized to actually change that except on a moral and ethical level. And thankfully, there's a lot of people that are really, really into that. What Democracy Dollars does is it flips the narrative entirely, right? Think about how many politicians would be incentivized to back this, knowing that all of the media things that they have to actually interact with are going to be extremely hungry for this, right? Like there will be a lot of intense lobbying because where this money actually gets spent when people are spending donating to campaigns is on media. It's on Facebook. It's on frickin' T-shirts. It's on finally paying all the podcasts for doing all these interviews. I'm totally kidding. You know what I mean? Like the incentive structure ends up getting flipped to the point where it's going to be really, really easy to want this. And I go back to if you haven't listened to it, I think it's like Tweak the Vote from Radio Lab. The first 15 minutes is a fucking nightmare, where they basically talk about the fact that people are feeling entirely disconnected. People are voting people in. The idea that the policies that poor and middle class people back only ever get applied when billionaires also agree. There's absolutely no feedback loop where people are feeling like things are actually being addressed. And that's a huge problem. And it's leading to a desire, polling numbers for authoritarianism all over the frickin' world.
Yeah.
Right? So $23 billion, again, a rounding error in the U.S. budget, gives everybody $100 every single cycle, from a freaking homeless person to a rich person, literally everybody, right? Where it's, use it or lose it, and you get to back the campaign or campaigns of your choice. That amount of getting people connected to, and honestly, having politicians now being incentivized, instead of like dialing for dollars, I would just be going and talking to literally as many human beings as humanly possible, because I could actually make more for my campaign that way. Right? It's just for $23 billion. It's that's cheap. Like, right. Cancel 2 tanks. Done.
There's one thing on your policy list that it strikes right at my very core as an online broadcaster. You have on the dozens of more policies to come, including social media addiction reduction. I got to tell you, we're going to lobby hard against this. We want people addicted. We want people addicted to their Facebook stream, so they can, or thousands of people can watch us every day. So, can you explain that? What's in play there? That's a problem I didn't know that we had.
Absolutely. Can I just grab? I'm so sorry for this. My computer is actually dying in front of my eyes. That's why I can't
do what you got to do.
We'll wait.
We'll talk about you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
He's pretty awesome.
I like this guy.
Yeah,
I told you were going to like this guy.
Yeah, I had no doubt about that. I had no doubt about that, and I feel better about my one hang-up on this, knowing that he's not the only, he's not the only primary opponent.
Hey, if that's what does it for you,
if he was, it would still be a problem for me.
All right, fine.
But he's not, so I'm good now.
All right, cool. All right, everything is fixed.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
No worries.
We didn't have any fun while you were gone.
But yes.
we did talk about you.
So to answer your question, so I studied psychology as an undergrad, and one of the important leaders in the field of the effects of social media is this Professor Jonathan Haidt and Professor Jean Twenge, both social psychologists who have documented the effects of social media on especially teenage and adolescent girls' depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. and it is shocking, where we have seen an unprecedented rise. I mean, if you go from college campuses to high schools, there is a direct line up correlation between the introduction of smartphones and the addictive use of social media on the health and well-being of basically young people. And so that's what that's tapping into, is this really shocking set of new data that shows that we're literally letting many kids die because they're addicted to a constant state of social comparison.
So how do you combat that? I mean, without throttling back access, how do you combat that?
Yeah, so one of Andrew's proposals I think is really interesting is we eliminated essentially congressional technology advisement in before I was born in the mid 90s, and so he wants to open.
So back then, the internet like came out of the wall and it screamed at you like a ghost.
That I can confirm.
Sorry.
And so having a dedicated Department of Technology with technologists who are actually in part working in the Valley and working hand in hand, where we need to regulate the addictive use of social media and these technologies in the same way we regulate the addictive use of other products in our market. And so there are many tech ethicists and ethical designers who've suggested, you know, we take for granted the way, for example, your Twitter feed is ceaseless or your Instagram feed is endless. That bottomless design is deliberate. And so there's actually ethical ways of designing technology to make it less addictive and less harmful to people.
So,
Yeah.
so you be talking about things like awareness campaigns and what, like that's what I think of. I think of like the no smoking campaigns as I sit here puffing on a cigarette. You know what I mean? That are designed to like help people, parents, be mindful of how much time their kids are spending on these devices. I don't. What would that look like?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely an education and a cultural component, but it actually is also literally the infrastructure. So, you know, the public sector, the government is involved in our design of, you know, crosswalks and how we get across the street safely. And we take for granted that there are certain rules of the road, right? Because there are certain risks posed by cars and by traffic. And with the internet, we've essentially let companies self-regulate and create that infrastructure and the rules of the road on their own. It's not just awareness and advocacy. It's actually working hand in hand with technologists to say, well, we need a rubric, we need a framework where it cannot be that your bottom line and returns to shareholders come at the cost of a generation of kids growing up in a constant state of anxiety and depression, and raising rates of suicidal ideation. Okay,
I can see that. I think it will be immensely unpopular. Well, I see why it might be necessary.
Well, you know, actually, if you talk to the Zuckerbergs and the Musks and the Tristan Harrises of the world, they're begging for the public sector to step in, because
interesting.
They can't draw the lines themselves. And if you saw the congressional hearings, you know, a couple months back, you'll see why they're begging for help, because the current leaders in the House don't really have the faintest sense of how the technology works.
I was going to say, I was shocked at how underinformed they were.
Right.
Even armies of staffers behind them. I was absolutely shocked at some of the questions that were being fielded that day.
Right. So even it's sort of imagine, so they can't because it's a giant corporation, right? They can't, I think even legally, crush their own capacity to make money, right? Which is why they're basically asking the government to set these rules or standards. Which again, like it comes down to the data, right? This is why I love interviewing candidates that back the Humanity First platform, because every single one of them uses the word data about 900 times, and it's important, right? There is new data that suggests that this is actually damaging. So whether it's throttling the amount of time that kids can be on these apps or whatever, like there's going to be super smart people that are like, yeah, we know exactly and can define in detail what the actual issue is. And I mean, people like Facebook, they have all this data. I bet you anything, if they actually pulled the lid off, they could show you exactly what the correlation number is for a 13-year-old is on Facebook based on the amount of time that they're on Facebook and the percentage likelihood that they're going to have more suicidal ideation. I literally bet they could print it out for you, right? So then it's just a matter of figuring out what we need to do to actually impede that or solve for it. And there's going to be so many issues like that over the next 10 years, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, it goes even beyond just the effects of technology on mental health, but it's like the basic functioning of a democracy. Mm-hmm. We did not expect that the Russians could toss in 150, grand and essentially like muck up with misinformation campaigns our entire elections process. So it's not just mental health and having a functional, social life, and also having a functional democracy where we can tell truth from fact, or as Vice President Biden would say, fact from fiction. And so our fundamental sense-making machines, from our news engines to our Facebook feeds, cannot be like we cannot outsource to the algorithm what information gets fed up to different silos and different pockets of society. And so we cannot allow companies to self-regulate. They're asking for guidelines. They're asking for ways to protect the public. And this bleeds even further into just having a functional democracy where we can agree on the truth.
We could do this all day. I don't know how much time you have set aside for this today, but I've just thought of 3 more questions.
Yeah, we usually do an hour, John, but can we keep you for a little bit, or do you have to run?
We can do a little bit. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I have sort of almost a personal interest question. Having learned this from watching the amazing documentary about AOC's run, I learned that she wasn't alone. Like, I tend to think of her in isolation from other candidates, but there was a group of young candidates from across the country that were profiled in that documentary. Who you're running with? I mean, are there others that you're in contact with that are running the same kinds of campaigns you are in other places? Yeah,
and that's actually a super interesting framing, because part of my goal was, just as we had the brand new Congress and that movement arise out of the Sanders 16 campaign, the goal was to create a Humanity First Congress. And there actually is a wave of candidates. There's at least 4 of us, 3 or 4 of us in New York who are running on universal basic income. There's someone in LA, there's someone running in Georgia, there's folks in Chicago. There are a number of folks running across the country running on a universal basic income.
Yeah, we interviewed the guy from LA, and I think one JFK from, I think he's from New York as well.
Yeah.
But if you get in touch with them, I want to talk to every single one of them, because that's one of the things we've been talking about as well. Is like this has to be a movement that is far bigger than one presidential candidate, and like, presuming even that he wins, to your point, we're gonna need the backing. Having 20 to 50 candidates in the near term that are in Congress that have the capacity to be a voting bloc on this issue is going to be really important. So that's fun. Yeah. So if you get in touch with any of them, just fire them over and just let me know.
So Yankees or Mets?
Yankees.
Why are you so sad? I don't know anything about sports ball, but that sounded resigned and sad.
You sound disappointed in your own choices.
Well, I think when the question's asked, it's always like,
oh yeah, well, where you live, I'm sure that make yourself I
Yeah.
love both teams equally.
Yeah,
You know?
I was gonna say, like, most politicians would probably try to find some way to hedge. You're like, nah, Yankees.
Way to sit
That's
on the fence. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. All right.
Principle is important. So, yeah, I want to invite anybody. So, we have a lot of people from the Moving Forward community that are they're checking this out as well. I want to invite anybody who wants to back this platform to send John some money. You can go to herzog2020.com.
I'm putting the link back in. I've done it a couple times, but
excellent. Thank you, sir. And fire him some money. Obviously, we're me personally, I'm backing literally anybody who's backing this platform, whether it's giving them as much media attention as I possibly can to just helping to glue the coalition together, because it really is an important thing that you're doing, and the way that you're framing it is really important too. Like this is not going to be an overnight thing, and we need to keep working on it until it's finished. So that's awesome. John, thank you so much for coming on Hashtag Coffee this morning, man.
Well, thank you guys for having me. Thank you guys for for being a voice and having some sick backgrounds and making.
Well, check back in with us, and if you think of any of the other Humanity First candidates that might want to come on and talk to a couple of aging progressive geezers, we would love to have them on.
Absolutely.
All right.
I hate that. That is actually also me.
Yeah, who's got to go ice their back after the show?
Shut up, Greg.
Not me.
It's me. God damn it. Anyway, John, thanks again. We're looking forward to when you win, or at least I am.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Totally are. Yep. All right.
Awesome. Cool. Consensus achieved. All right. So, Greg, you want to say our weird thing?
Yeah, thank you for joining us on Hashtag Coffee today. I want to make sure you know that you can donate to keep us in the style to which Corey has become accustomed by going to solocal.live. That is our website where you could make an ongoing donation to keep us on the air. Honestly, we used to do this with 2 cell phones and had to be in the same Starbucks booth, which was always awkward. And now we get to broadcast from the comfort of our own home. So we would love for you to support the show. And what's happening is we're getting more and more guests with a high visibility level like Jonathan, and we're pretty excited to be able to do that for you. So we love that. And we're back tomorrow with a science show at 10 a.m. where we're going to talk about, I think AI is probably going to be the topic tomorrow.
Yep.
Corey picked out his 2 TED lectures like 6 seconds after I suggested this idea. So that's going to be exciting and fun. Also tonight, locally, we are at Bourbon on Main Street in Newport Richey, Florida, for a benefit for our friend Dino DiBernardinis, who's in the thread with us. Dino is a veteran, and he has had to go some cancer treatments, some radiation and chemotherapy treatments, and not all of that is not all of that is covered by the VA. So there are things that Dino needs to take care of, and we're going to raise some money for him tonight right here in Newport Richey. We hope you'll join us for that. Also, we're here every day, 10 o'clock, Monday through Friday, doing Hashtag Coffee, and Sasquatch is real.
Andrew Yang is a taco. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Yeah, I don't even know when this started, but it's kind of the point now where if Greg doesn't say Sasquatch is real at the end of the show, people are like, hey, are you guys okay?
Is that code? Are you being held hostage? They don't understand.
Yeah. Hey, dude, thank you so much, man. That was fun.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you again. Ciao.
Thanks, John.